It's time for another edition of Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have comedian Brian Hicks joining me. Check him out on the Instagrams and all that good stuff. Also follow me on Instagram and my website to see upcoming dates. paulfcomedy is a website. If you're listening to this, you can go to YouTube and watch it. It's youtube.com/paulfcomedy. On Instagram at Paul Farahvar. And don't forget to check out our sponsor. As some of you know, I used to be a practicing lawyer in Chicago. I no longer practice, but from time to time, I need a lawyer. And when I need a lawyer, I call my friend Scott Shapiro. Scott Shapiro has been practicing law for over 25 years in Chicago. He does it all, from workers' compensation to personal injury, employment issues, and even entertainment law and contract needs. If you need a lawyer, call my friend Scott. 312-648-8800. That's 312-648-8800. Or you can email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. You're welcome. You love sex. Everyone does. Have you ever used sex toys? Ever wanted to? Or you just feel weird about the whole thing? Well, Love Shop Toys has been in the business of destigmatizing sex toys for years, 20 years. You want a sex toy? Go to loveshoptoys.com and check out their huge variety of options. Whether you're straight, gay, trans, whatever you're into, Love Shop Toys has something for you. And if you're uncomfortable about it, guess what? They send things discreetly so no one has to know about whatever you're into. And even if you're not very active in the sex toy business, check it out. loveshoptoys.com. They send you everything, and it's free shipping for everything over $69. In addition to the free shipping, if you use the code AWAKE69, you get 20% off your whole purchase. That's right, AWAKE69. Go to loveshoptoys.com/AWAKE69 right now and get your stuff. Get your toys, have some fun. You're welcome. Hey guys, it's time for Why Are You Awake? This week we have comedian and manager of one of the finest comedy clubs in the country, Brian Hicks. Hey Brian.
Hey Paul.
Thanks for coming on.
This is my pleasure. Truly my pleasure.
Is it really?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I've seen the episodes. I'm like, when do I get a call? That's what I said. I said, when
I had called you.
You've called me numerous times.
I've called you, and you're always upset because you're like, can you just give me more than 24 hours notice? I'm like, that's not how this works.
Well, I know. That's why we're here. Yeah. 3 months later.
We made it, Brian.
We did make it.
And Brian, I want to tell people our history, too, because you and I think the first show we ever did, tell me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong.
I'll tell you if you're wrong.
Do you remember?
I do remember.
Really?
I do.
Oh, God. All right. I thought it was in Rosemont.
Yeah, nope. Definitely wasn't in Rosemont.
Okay, fuck. I thought we
Did you think it was?
I thought our first one, because I look back on a show, I think it was 2016. But I guess that doesn't make sense because I knew you before that.
With Judy Gold?
With Judy Gold, yeah.
Yeah. That was not our first show together. I do know our first show together, though.
Okay, I want to hear it from you.
I got booked to do a spot at the Laugh Factory, and I showed up there, and I'm looking around, and it was... I think it was probably my second or maybe even third time there. And I just remember walking around, and every time I'd gone there, I go, I don't know who's in charge. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to anything. Like, nobody's telling me where to go, where to stand, the order. I didn't know. I think I came up to you. You were hosting a show, whatever show it was, and I go, I don't know where I'm supposed to be. You go, we'll just hang out over here and listen for your name.
Oh, really?
That's what you said. So I just kind of hung over by the side of the stage and I just waited. and eventually you kind of called me up and I'm like, all right. And went up and I did 10 minutes, whatever it was.
There wasn't a lineup sheet?
I'm sure there was, but I just didn't know where to look. Like, I didn't know. Nobody's like, hey, here's the green room. Here's anything.
When was that? It must have been like 2015.
Easy. Yeah, easily 10 years ago, I'm sure.
Okay. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
I do remember the shows that we did at you were at Rosemont a lot back then.
Yeah. I hosted quite a bit in Rosemont for sure.
Every time I think I had a feature spot, you were one of the people that was hosting. But you were always, you don't really give up a lot. People don't know where they stand with you.
Yeah, that's a strength of mine.
Is it a strength?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I am very standoffish, and I don't know if I should be putting this out there. So
put it out there.
People know. I really am, and I don't know if it's definitely me, and people are like, wow, that guy's an asshole, you know? But I'm not. I'm just kind of like really reserved and kind of pull back a little bit. I am aware of it. I'm self-aware, and I'm trying to get better at it, just so you know.
I also think it's of a generation. We talked about this recently on the podcast where when people of our generation, when you like someone, you kind of are dicks to them, right? Yeah. Like you're comfortable enough where in your skin where you can make fun of someone.
Absolutely.
And that's how we show that we like you.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And so sometimes, though, if you don't know the person well enough, they're like, wait, is he being sincere or is he being a dick? And whenever I think that you don't like me, I'm like, well, you did do one great thing for me is which you recommended me for Dry Bar.
Right.
So I was like, he couldn't have done that unless he liked me.
That's true. That is true. But there are younger comics now, Paul, where I do like them. And then I will kind of mess with them a little bit. But as the manager of Zanies too, they don't know how to take it because a lot of people are, especially they're always on guard, right? They always want to put their best self forward. Mm-hmm. They want to present themselves in the best light in front of me,
right?
Because they want bookings ultimately, and I get it. So when I kind of mess with them a little bit, they don't know how to take it, and they won't give it back because they're like, well, I don't want to get them mad at me, sort of thing. So there's a little confusion there, and that also has to do with me also being standoffish at the same time.
Yeah, it's a double. There's two things going against you, right? Was that like that back when you started? Were the older comics, were they dicks to you, or was it different back then?
No, completely different. And I don't even think it's that
not dicks, but
yeah, right out of the gate, everybody was very welcoming to me and stuff. I had people going to bat for me with Bert. Like I was like a year and a half in.
Bert is
like,
at Zanies.
Bert, who was at Zanies
manager,
and they were going to bat for me right away. They're like, Bert, this guy's really good and he's clean and he's likable.
Right.
And, so yeah, they were very, very helpful when I started.
Have you always been a clean comic? Cleanish?
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think I've ever heard you swear on stage.
Yeah, I definitely swore, but I've always been pretty clean.
Then you go straight to church afterwards.
Of course. But my mindset was always the cleaner you are, the more you're going to get work. Yeah. And because anybody could use a clean comic. And if you're leaving a little bit dirty, there's only so many places people could put you. Mm-hmm. But I would go to places and they go, oh, he's very clean. You're a hot commodity. Some people are like, you're a hot commodity. You're young. You're willing to host shows left and right. Like I would always host. That was like my thing. I wanted to be a good comedian and on stage where other people were kind of waiting for feature work and stuff. And I'd be like, that's fine. So I was working, 3 weekends a month. And some of my friends were working 1 weekend a month because that's all that they had to offer for feature spots where I was hosting and I was working 3. So I was getting more stage time. And people were like, oh, he's clean and kind of, bringing me on the road with him and stuff, which definitely helped.
So when you started, what was that, like 1950 or 1959? What was that with Rodney Dangerfield and stuff?
That's when I was birthed.
What year did you start comedy?
I started in December of '98.
Dear God.
Yeah.
Were you Were you bearded and married?
It was me
still?
And 3 other comedians in Chicago at that time.
98? Really? That's amazing.
I know.
I'm trying to do the math.
It's like 25-ish.
That's a lot.
Coming up on 25 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Were you Were you single then?
I was single.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've only known you as a married dad.
Yeah. I was married before. Wait, you were married twice? Yeah, so I'm on my second marriage. I was married before. That's what pushed me into comedy.
What?
I was married and then...
Are you allowed to talk about this?
Yeah, sure.
Divorce and everything? Are you married still to 2 people? Okay, I want to make...
Just got 1 under my belt now, but we separated and then I really didn't have much going on. Like... She pretty much alienated all my friends. So I was like, all right, now I don't even have the one person.
Put the mic lower so I can get you kept stepping away from it. It's okay.
So now I have to find something to keep myself busy. The comedy club had that was close by me. I used to go there a couple times a month. I just loved the club. It was like 10 minutes from my house. Where was this? Tinley Park. It was Riddles in Orland Park.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They had closed down for about 6 months. Well, the owner came back and he reopened. And my uncle, who I had worked for at the time, we made eyeglasses. He goes, hey, they're opening a comedy club again. I know. He goes, they're opening that comedy club again. I was like, oh, cool. So I went and I applied for a job, and I called up the guy. I'm like, hey, I want a job. And he's like, yeah, all right. You know, why don't you come in? Yeah, it was Ken.
Ken Stevens, wow.
Yep. And he goes, yeah, come on in. Like, he almost hired me over the phone. You know, it was for a doorman position. So I'm like, he should probably see me first. Right. I'm like 5'7". And so I show up, and we really did hit it off. I mean, we got along pretty well. He was painting, I think, and I was like, I painted houses before. I go, yeah, let me go. So I grabbed a roller and started. So I think that was just like, oh, this kid's willing to jump in and do whatever. And so he hired me on the spot. Within 2 weeks, I was the floor manager.
Are you serious?
And he gave me keys to the club, like 2 weeks. And I'm like,
that's all it takes.
Yeah, so it went pretty quickly.
You should be nice anyway to everybody, but like always be nice to everybody that you're working with, because like the people that were the doorman when I started at Laugh Factory are like managers, and like they represent people like around them. Like everyone, it all starts from the ground up.
Absolutely.
And it's like, just don't be a dick.
Yeah,
be easy to work with. And here you are 2 weeks in, you're a floor manager at a club.
Yeah, floor manager at the club.
Were you wanted to work there so you can absorb comedy, or what?
I wanted to work there because, like I said, I had just gotten separated.
Right.
I had nothing going on. My friends were gone. So I was like, I need to do something to meet new people, because obviously the people in my lives at that point, they were leaving. So I got the job because I wanted to go somewhere like on weekends where you would normally meet people. And I didn't want to look like a freak who was just standing there in the corner by myself. I go, I get a job at a comedy club. I work the door. I'm paid to work there. Like, I'm supposed to be standing there by myself, taking tickets or whatever.
That's a good idea.
It was a great idea at the time. And I met people. And so I worked there for about 6 months. Always a good sense of humor. Comics used to come in and they'd be like, and we'd kind of riff a little bit, and they go, you want to be a comedian, don't you? Like and I go, no. I can imagine. I couldn't imagine standing on stage and just being a target up there. And then some of the servers were like, you should try it. It was very funny. I mean, I'll say that about myself. And then the turning factor was a comic got booked a feature. He was getting booked a feature on a regular basis. And I would watch him up on stage, and he was not funny, but people were laughing. And I would get so upset at those people because I was like, what do you laugh? This guy's not even funny. Like, I knew I was funnier than this guy. That was your motivation? That was it. And then the wait staff, they dared me to go on stage, and I did. I set it up for like
an month. Open mic, you mean? Or he just went up?
I went up on a late show Saturday night for the very first time
just ever did a
on stage.
Guest spot?
I did. Yeah, guest spot.
And you knew, how far in advance did you know you were going to do it that night?
3 weeks, maybe a month.
Okay, so you prepped a little bit.
I did prep, and I used to do these rap songs. And I know. It's called.
Did you have a rap name?
Hey, this is 98. Remember?
That's
Paul?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. And so I opened with one of these rap songs, and I did some shtick. And then I closed with a rap song.
What was like the raps about?
The first one, it was about farts.
Let's hear it.
I'm not going to do it.
Just give me like the first. You don't have to rap it, but just say what it was.
Chicks are funny. Chicks are smart. Because some of them claim that they never fart. But I'm no sucker. I'm no lollipop. I smelt it. She dealt it. It's got to stop. She said she didn't. I say she spiked it. Admit it. You did it. And you even liked it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that go?
It went great.
Late night.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they love it. Then I did shtick, and then I did another rap song at the end. I feel like that one, I don't even remember what that one was. But my set went great. It actually went really good. It was, I don't know, I'm sure it was a nervous energy about me. I didn't look at anybody. I mean, the rap stuff, I was already doing that at like parties and stuff like that. So I knew that had a little traction. The stand-up part, I was like, this is all brand new to me, like standing up there without any music or any kind of...
Did you do any performance before?
No.
No.
I do remember being like at a party and... drinking and just everyone's getting, and then like something would happen, and then I would just kind of jump on it, and then I would just roll with it a little bit. And even people who didn't know me, they were like laughing hysterically, just whatever was going on, like just the rhythm of whatever I was saying at the time.
In essence, the thing that brought you to comedy was anger at a shitty comic getting laughs.
Exactly.
And that explains why you are the way you are.
That could possibly be, yeah.
Do you still get angry when you see that happening?
I don't see it happening as often, honestly. Back then, I definitely did.
Well, the 90s that was like the comic bubble, the dead time for
This
comedy.
was definitely after that whole...
It wasn't like comedy clubs now where it's packed and everyone's enjoying. It was like slow weekends, I assume, there at the Riddles Club.
No, actually, weekends were packed because there wasn't a ton of comedy clubs at the time. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, I can't throw a rock without hitting somewhere where they're doing some sort of stand-up comedy.
Every night.
That was my first time on stage. I remember walking off and I'm like, I got to get back up there. Well, I didn't know what an open mic was. I didn't know anything.
They didn't have an open mic at Riddles?
At that time, they did not.
Okay.
And I didn't know what it was. And then I go, well, I got to get back up there. And then somebody's like, we should do an open mic. I'm like for music? I didn't know. But there were obviously open mics for comics. When I started doing open mics, legitimately, there was about, I don't know, in the south suburbs where I was at, there was probably 5 people that I knew that did comedy. And then there was a handful of people on the north side that sometimes would trek to the south side. I would go to the Barrel of Laughs, which was the first open mic that I ever did. Well, there was no comics, and they had to do a show for an hour and a half. The guy would be like, you can do 15 minutes, like at an open mic. And that was every week. He's like, yeah, you can do 12 minutes this week and 15. It wasn't like 3 minutes and you're getting the horn playing. I mean, there was so much time. And then Riddles had started the open mic, and the owner's like, you want to host it? I was like, yeah, of course. So that was on, Barrel Laughs was on Wednesday, and then Riddles was on Thursday. I was getting those 2 days of open mics. I was getting more stage time than I couldn't write that fast.
Right.
So it was pretty good.
And if you're hosting, you had to do different stuff every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you work on the skills and the interaction and just the hosting stuff.
Did you go to the North Side for the Lion's Den thing?
You know what I did?
Did you know about that?
I did know about it. I went there once, maybe twice. It wasn't my cup of tea because I wasn't ever going to get any work out of it, right? Mm-hmm. I would get stage time, but I was already getting... I was getting half an hour of stage time a week, and I was brand new. So it didn't make sense to me. And
because of the drive, or just because
both? It was the drive, and there was always a north side, south side thing going on with comedians.
It was cliquish too.
It was very cliquish, and some of the north side comics would come to the south side. They knew I worked at Riddles. They knew I had the owner's ear, and when I did go to the north side, they were very nice to me, and some of them were like, oh, you can have my spot and stuff. So that was actually, beneficial and, for me. But
98, you start comedy. How quickly are you starting to get weekend, paid work?
Yeah, so, the first club I started working...
Did you continuously go from 98 on?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. I would, Riddles was the first, where the owner was like, hey, you could host a weekend. And so I would work there probably one weekend a month. And I did that on a pretty regular basis. Plus, I was doing the open mics. And then about a year and a half, maybe, I think it was the first time that I did a showcase for Bert at Zany's.
Birdhouse,
yeah. Which that made sense to me because I could possibly get work out of it. So I would definitely make that trek and audition for Bert.
So you're always just thinking of how something can benefit you.
I mean, I think we should all.
It's not a team job. I get it.
It's not.
Growing up, did you have were you involved in comedy at all? Or watching TV? Were you
sure.
What was your first memory of seeing a stand-up comedy? Or were you watching it as a kid?
13, maybe 14. I remember the Rodney Dangerfield Young Comedian specials came on HBO.
Okay.
And I remember me and my friends watching those and just laughing hysterically. So that was my first introduction to all that.
So you had HBO at 13. Must be nice.
Yeah, it was nice. I didn't. My friend did, though. Okay. They were rich. They had an in-ground pool, too, so it all made sense.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that there, and it was, it was Bob Saget and Paul Rodriguez was huge at the time. Obviously,
I loved Paul Rodriguez growing up.
He was great.
A.K.A. Pablo.
He was
that show.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. He was really one of my favorites. In fact, he's probably one of maybe 3 or 4 comics who I met where I was starstruck. Like it was like really surreal moment for me because I did love him so much growing up.
He was one of the ones that I was like one of my huge, as a kid, I loved, and this is before I never would picture doing comedy like you. It was like by accident.
Yeah.
And then the other one, which you were there when I finally met Jake Johansson recently, like a couple months ago. And I just walked in and I was like, you guys were already talking. I was like, I don't know how to tell this guy, but like, I only took this weekend to like work with him.
Yeah, it didn't take you long. You told him right away.
Did I? Yeah, I remember. Well, because I think you guys were in the middle of a conversation. I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and talk to him. And then now he like messages me. I got him into Corn Nuts. So now we're friends. No big deal.
Well, he's super. Talk about a professional and a guy who's been doing it forever and just top of the game forever. I mean, he's great.
So funny still. And it was surreal to be working with him after like watching him in Letterman as a kid.
Sure. And then you said that was the first show you saw at Zanies, right?
And that was the first stand-up show I saw live was Jake Johansson at Zanies.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 20 years later and I'm opening for him, which was, and when I saw the stand-up show, it was more than 20 years, it was probably 25 years, but at that time I just was like, oh, stand-up comedy. It wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
I was doing raps about farts too. Different. I was doing songs about farts. It wasn't raps. It was just acoustic songs.
It was acoustic.
Different lyrics. Completely. It was.
How did you start comedy, Paul? Did we talk about this?
Yeah. I interview you. You don't ask questions.
Okay, that's fine.
No, Bob Saget told me I was funny, and that fucking.
Oh, you're right. I did hear that story.
CNN covered it. No big deal. It's headline news. He basically told me I was funny, and Toomey was there when I met him too. Mike Toomey.
Yeah. They were very close. Bob used to have Mike open for him all the time.
They were opening in Indiana, and my friend was opening for him. He just told me to come with him and act like his manager because he was so nervous. And I was a manager at the time for music, so I was like, yeah, maybe I will become a manager of comedy. It seems like this could be something big because comedy was starting to make a comeback. Sure. And then
what year was that?
This was probably 2012, 2011. Yeah, because it was actually 13 years ago in April. He was at the Horseshoe Casino, I think.
Yeah, right.
And then I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to hang out and talk to him, but we just started talking. I was drunk from the Cubs home opener, so I was just walking and talking with him. And then I told him something funny. I was tuning his guitar because I play guitar, no big deal. And then I said something. He goes, "Oh, are you doing that? Is that a bit you're doing tonight?" I was like, "No, I'm not a comedian. I'm just here with my friends." So you should go up. He thought I was just like a comedian trying to get stage time. Sure. And I was like, "Oh no, I've never done stand up."
But did you go up? You didn't.
No, I didn't go up.
But he just told you were funny, and that was enough.
Yeah, that was enough. I was thinking about doing it because I was doing improv at the time, and then he's like, "Do this." I forgot it was a joke about being a musician or something like that. I don't remember the whole deal, but it's like, "Do it," because I want to riff about it. I think he was just going to use me to.
That's funny.
But I remember Mike Toomey was like, "Yeah, you should go up." They're all, I don't know if they were like,
yeah.
I mean, in hindsight, you're like, maybe they're just fucking with me and just try to be like, yeah, let's let this idiot go. But
sure. So I was just at the club and the show sold out tonight. And two girls walked up and one girl was, "Listen, we don't have tickets, but we were hoping that we can, we just thought maybe we'd come here and there's something we can do and we can get in." I go, "No problem. Come on, let's just go on. We'll just go hang up in the green room. We'll just go meet him. We'll just hang out in the green room if that's cool." And they're just looking at me like this. And they go, "Really?" I go, "No." I go, "You can't just walk up and think that you're going to." And then you can see in her eyes, I like broke her heart. Like for a split second, she's like, "I can't believe this actually worked." And then, they did get in. We did get them in the show.
Oh, that's good.
So
you charge them $100 a piece.
I did not. No,
you could have.
Whatever the door price was, that's what we charged them.
That actually did happen to me. For music wise, I didn't have tickets to go see the band Wallflowers. Do you remember them?
I do.
And they had opened for I want to say the Spin Doctors, but I'm not sure.
Sure.
And we hung out with the Wallflowers. This is back when I was in high school. Fast forward 4 years later, they're huge. In college, I drove down to Champaign. I'm like, it's sold out, but I think I can get in. I go and hang out.
Funny.
I go in. It's a sold out show, WXRT. I go and hang out by their tour bus.
Sure.
And then Rami Jaffe comes out, who's now plays with the Foo Fighters. And I had a hot girlfriend at the time. We walked up. I go, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we saw you when you opened for the Spin Doctors at Cubby Bear in 1994, and we don't have tickets. We drove here from Champaign." He's like, "I'll hook you up."
Jesus. That was it?
So then when he goes, when the band goes on stage, just come with us, is it Martyrs on Lincoln Avenue. When the band goes up, Lynn Bramer from XRT brings them up and goes, ladies and gentlemen, the Wallflowers. We walk with the band into the club, and then they go on stage, and we go into the audience in the front row. Boom. And then after the show, I got to meet Dylan, Jacob Dylan, Bob Dylan's son, hung out with him for a while.
Yeah. Did he think you were funny?
No, I was wasted, and I was like, you're the best. I'm in a band too. He's like, what's the name of your band? I was like, Fat Albert with a PH. He goes, Fat Albert. I remember that.
Yeah.
Sure as shit. I run into him 10 years later at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, hanging out till 2 a.m, hanging out with Jacob Dylan. We're hanging out at the bar. I'm like, I don't know if you remember me. I met you at the Martyrs. He goes, I remember that show. I go, yeah, I was in a band. And I swear to my every grave house, he goes, Fat Albert. I go, yeah.
So funny.
The guy's probably a pretty genius guy. I mean, his dad's pretty smart too. So it does work. You could just weasel into tickets.
Yeah, I've always been like, I don't know if I have the balls to do that.
You gotta have the balls.
I know. You got to put yourself out there.
So what about late night? Were you a late night person back then when you were doing comedy? Well, you're working at a bar.
Well, for sure. Yeah. When I started, I was always late night. I remember leaving the club and it would be like breakfast at 2:30 in the morning. And that was my kind of routine. I would stop at the same place. And turns out, like, I was like, oh, this is the place I go. This is where I always go have breakfast. And then when I met my now wife, I'd be like, yeah, well, let's go over this. I always have breakfast over here. We go there, and she's like, this is the worst. And I go, well, I mean, it's the only thing open.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's probably bad.
Did you meet your wife at the comedy club?
I did.
Oh, wow.
So her brother, I was hosting an open mic. It's so funny. I was hosting an open mic. There's, I don't know, maybe 40 people in the crowd. And I come walking off stage. And some guy, as I'm walking down the walkway, he tugs on me. He goes, hey, man, I want to try and go up on stage. He goes, I'm going to come back next week. He goes, I'm going to bring like 50 people. That's what he said. Sorry. And then I go, I'll tell you what, if you bring 50 people, I'll let you go up, right? I mean, there was no list or anything really at the time. You would show up at the club and you'd pretty much go up. Yeah, he didn't know. And sure as shit, he came back a week later, maybe it was 2 weeks later, and he brought every bit of 50 people with him, and his sister was one of them, and she would film him and stuff. I mean, his mom was there, dad was there, and he went up and he did impressions. He had a rock mask. He was super good at impressions. He used to do an impression of David Lee Roth. And I was like,
Van Halen, for those who don't know.
Right. I go, Jim, that impression's amazing.
Oh, it's Gaffigan?
No, it wasn't Gaffigan. I go, Jim, that impression's so good. And I go, you got to do that. And he goes, yeah, but a lot of people don't get it. And I go, I know, but the 2 or 3 that get it, man, they're really going to get it. And his sister, that was the introduction to her. She was dating somebody at the time, I think. And then
that was Jim Gaffigan.
That was Bob Saget.
Did you have other jobs before you did the week? So you were working at the comedy club, like
yes,
corporate gigs, or just like jobs, career jobs,
like a job. Yeah, I did have a job. So I was making eyeglasses. I made eyeglasses for about 10 years, and then after that, I think I started working at the club, and I knew that the eyeglass thing wasn't going to go anywhere. And it was me and my uncle. It was a 2-man operation. So you can come in with your prescription, and we can make you glasses in about an hour and send you on your way, right? And it was me and him, and I just was like, I'm not going anywhere at this job, and now I don't have a wife or anything.
Yeah.
So I go, I got to find something else. So I gave him like 3 months notice. I go, I got to go. I got to move on. And the guy, the club was like, hey.
Was that, and now that eyeglass company is Pearl.
Yeah,
like he should have stuck it.
I remember like the owner, him being like, you should come work for me full time. And, and I was into comedy at the time.
Owner of Riddles.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I quit my job and I was like, hey, I'm free. He's like, And I'm like, well, this is, I had put money away, so I was kind of prepared for it a little bit. So I didn't do much. I managed there. I did comedy, and then I was like, I got to get another job. I got to figure out. So I got a job at an auto auction, and I worked there for like 18 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
which auto auction?
It was Mannheim.
Oh, yeah.
I started there as a driver and moved up to management there, but I always did comedy. So comedy was always my side gig, and I thought it was the best of both worlds because, I had insurance and I was making a regular salary, And then I had the weekend stuff and comedy. And then if a gig got canceled, it wasn't the end of the world for me. Where if you're a full-time comedian and you get a week canceled, you're like, shit, what am I going to do? I got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that for me. It was always just kind of extra and fun, yeah.
But when you do the auctions, you have regular hours? Do you have like 8 to 5?
Yeah, it's pretty much, 7 to 3, 3:30.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it was, yeah.
What are you doing late at nights after your shows or after you worked, other than getting breakfast?
So, well, that was.
Are you creative late at night, or are you just chilling out?
I wasn't creative at night, and I felt like it was always because the whole day, everything that's happened throughout the course of the day is weighing on me, right? So I've always been more creative first thing in the morning. I've got nothing in my palette. It's just all open, and I'm just driving and I see a sign and I'm like, hey, and my mind's just free to kind of think about different things, where I feel like later in the day or at night, I'm filled with everything that's kind of happened throughout the course of the day. Maybe I'm thinking about things that are happening the next day. And I don't know, that spontaneity just isn't there. I've done my best writing off of a conversation, and then you say something, and then I just say something, right?
So do you write it down, or how do you do it?
Yeah, well, I would say it, and then I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny, and then I would definitely write it down. And then on those, 4 or 5 hour drives in the car to the gigs, I just played in my head, and
there's a lot of traffic on these gigs.
No traffic. It was all highway. But I would just replay, what I said, the joke, and I kind of put the words where they need to go and stuff, and then ultimately I kind of write down. Because usually I would write down, if I was thinking about it, I would write down a joke and it'd be a paragraph, and then by the time I got it to where it was actually working and it fit, it was about 8 words or 9 words or something, and then a punchline.
Are you writing it out and then trying it out, or are you writing on stage, or both?
I write it out and I try it out, and the first 3 times I do it, I screw up something, I say something wrong, I leave something out, and then by the 3rd or 4th time, I got a pretty good feel of a pretty good vibe of like the tone of it and the rhythm of it and everything, and I'm like, okay, now it's just like making sure I'm choosing the right words for something like that.
Were you recording your sets back then and like listening to them?
I was great at that. Okay. I had a Walkman. That's how old we went back.
Walkmans, you can record on those.
Yeah, you could.
What?
I had a Walkman, and it had a record button, absolutely, and I had cassettes, and then I'd record my set, and I'd put the cassette in the car.
And listen to it on the way home?
And I was
on the way home, you mean, afterwards?
I was religious about that.
That's good.
It was great because I was learning what was working, what wasn't working so much faster than everybody else. Nobody was recording their sets back then. And then, about 5 years later, the video cameras came out and everyone started doing it. But I was religious about recording my sets at the beginning.
That's your writing process.
Was I not supposed to bring up religion?
No, I didn't know. Did you bring up religion?
No. That was my writing. That's my writing process.
That's your process. Yeah. So what about growing up? Were you like a night owl as a kid at all? Or were you going to bed you strike me as a person that went to bed early and woke up early.
When I was at the clubs, I obviously had those night hours, but I always had the full-time job during the day. So I couldn't stay up super late at night anyway. So there was always a get up and then do it all over again. I do remember taking weekend gigs where I'm exhausted. Like, you're working the whole week and then you've got something on a Thursday. It's 3 hours away. Well, I'd have to work Thursday. So I'm up at, 5:30, 6 o'clock, go to work, and then I'm driving 3 hours to a gig and then do the show. And people are like, this is crazy. How do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. That was fun for me. So it didn't seem like work. Yeah. And then I would usually be exhausted at that point, and I'm like, I gotta.
But that's when you were working, and that was the auction times, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so that was usually like that Thursday night, because most of the clubs I did were all Thursday through Saturday anyway. So then Friday night, once I kind of regroup and get rested, then I'd be like, all right, well, let's go out. I used to go out at clubs with managers and other comics all the time, and then I get to a point where once I had the family and stuff, I'm like, I can't get caught in a strip club.
Are you rushing home after your shows?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Not now, but I mean, because they're in bed, right? By the time you get off stage.
Yeah, there's nothing for me to do at home, yeah. When we had the kids and they were really small, the schedules actually worked perfectly because my wife would be with them, and then I would come home at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and if they were getting up, in the middle of the night,
you were on duty.
I was on duty, yeah.
if you're working, you were only working on the weekends, or were you going up during the week too? When I'm talking about like 10 years into comedy.
Sure. Well, I mean, I used to house MC at Zany's.
So you're doing that every night?
I mean, that would be a month at a time.
Yeah.
So I would come downtown, I would work the auction, and then 6 nights out of the week, I'd drive downtown, do the show. I was always hosting, so I had to stay till the end of the show.
Right.
And then Friday night was 2 shows, Saturday night was 3 shows. And then you're like, oh, thank God. And then you're like, oh, I got to go back one more day for Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 36 shows in a month. Driving downtown 30.
So just for people to know, you'd be house MC. You did every show except Monday, I believe, right?
Yeah, correct. They were dark on
every
Monday.
show. You'd host the show, which was a great way to get really good, really fast.
Yeah.
And then, but you also had a day job.
Yeah.
Because I was doing the same thing when I was house MC. I had to do the same thing, but I was a lawyer, and I just remember I was able to take naps at my office.
Nice.
I had a couch. What were you doing? Like, were you just fighting through with coffee and shit at your job?
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I always, the comedy part, it never seemed like a job to me.
Yeah.
It was always just fun. And I mean, even for as long as I've been doing it now, I rarely go into a show like just dreading like having to do it. It's just still a release for me. So that was anytime I got to that point of the day, I was like, oh, it's good. I mean, not that I wasn't tired.
Well, you're dreading as a host where you have to go. You've already done your time. You've done the feature, and then you got to sit for an hour, especially if you didn't like the headliner.
That's the worst part of it.
And you know the whole time you're like, and he's going over. He's supposed to do 50. He's doing an hour.
I would get so frustrated.
You have to wake up in 4 hours by the time you get home.
Yeah.
So you're not happy at that point. So don't lie to us.
I do remember at Zany's particular, so I would host a lot of shows, and I always did pretty well. Not great downtown, but I was a good host, and I was pretty likable, so I did well. And then I would always bring up these features, and these features were from all over. They'd be New York and L.A., Florida, whatever. And I remember bringing these people up, and they would be eating it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, these guys are horrible. These guys are horrible. I'm like, I can't believe he keeps bringing in, these different, just from all over the place. And then he's like, hey, Brian, I'm going to give you an opportunity to feature. And I'm like, this is awesome. So then the host goes and does well. I go up there, I'm eating it. And I go, I'm one of those features.
Yeah. It's feature spots. The middle spot is a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it's awesome.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not. But I do feel like it is the easiest job for me now that I feature. If I'm on the road with someone who's already big, it's already sold out show. I don't have to fucking promote anything. I don't have to worry about ticket sales. You just go up. You're doing 20, 25 minutes.
And if the host is any good, you don't even have to warm them up.
Yeah, they're already warm up. Yeah.
I mean, it really is a
two-man shows suck. I do hate the two-man thing. Sometimes.
It's too long. That first spot is just, it's awkward. Like, it's just, you're up there an awkward amount of time.
Well, it's also a weird transition because you've got to do, especially I work with some headliners who don't like any crowd work. I'm like, well, it's a two-man show. I've got to warm them up.
You got to do something.
So yeah, but it's a weird position to be in, especially if the club is used to a three-man show. Because then,
and if they want you to do 30 minutes up front, you're like, that's unheard of. Like, this should just be a one-man show.
That's all those shows, the funny business shows, it would always be 30 minutes in an hour.
Yeah.
Those are the shows in the Midwest. Funny Business runs amazing shows, and you would do 30 minutes.
Yep, up front, right on top.
And it was the worst spot sometimes.
Yeah.
The crowd's not ready for comedy sometimes.
Sometimes the crowd doesn't even know there's comedy.
Yeah, that's the best. I remember one time I did a show. I think it was a Funny Business show, but for sakes of this story, I'll say it wasn't. It was in Michigan. The bartender's like, are you guys the comedians? Me and Danny Callis came in. This is like 10 years ago. He goes, yeah. He goes, are you guys ready? And we're like, yeah, give us like 2 minutes. He goes, all right. And then I think he just counted in his head 60 seconds. And then he goes, he just jumped over the bar.
Yeah.
Goes, all right, guys, we're going to do some comedy now. I'm not a comedian. Drink specials are this. We got soup. All right, here's your first comedian, Paul. He just put it, we're all like, what the fuck?
It sounds like Wisecrackers that was in Maryville.
It wasn't Wisecrackers, but I remember just 30 minutes of just eating it.
You used to earn your chops, though, on those Yoder gigs. I mean, you really did, because you had to go up there for 30 minutes.
Yoder's Funny Business.
Start it, yeah.
Okay, so now you are on the cusp of going into the business side of comedy. You're still doing comedy. Now what are you doing? Because I feel like you're the manager at Zany's, so you get to choose when you go home. Are you sleeping earlier now, or are you still like a night owl? Because
definitely more of a night owl now than I was when I had the daytime job, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm still in, and I wake up later. I come in later. I could leave later. So definitely more now than it was 5 years ago for me. Absolutely.
So what are you doing after 11 o'clock now? If you're not doing a show or you're not working at Zany's, what are you doing with your time?
Yeah, I don't know. If I'm usually I'm at work, but honestly, everybody that works at Zany's now, they're so young, Paul.
Yeah.
And they're great. I have the most amazing staff.
They're great there, yeah.
From top to bottom. And they look at me, they're like, that's the old guy. Wait, what are you doing here so late at 7:30? I'm trying to get out of here.
Yeah, but you're leaving early.
Yeah.
And you have to be doing something with your time. Now your kids are old enough where they hate you or they don't care about you.
I'll do shows whenever I can. Honestly, the way that the shows are now and the independent shows, which I never did a lot of them back in the day. I always did clubs. I was like, it's kind of where you make your money and stuff.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of independent shows anyway. Now, you can get up. You can get up at 3 on a night, any night of the week if you want. You don't make a ton of money, but if you did 3 of them, you can make $100 in a night doing whatever. So I've been trying to do more of those because I'm not doing clubs as often as I used to, but I'm still trying to stay fresh and,
Yeah, and relevant.
Relevant, yeah, right.
Okay, so how long, let's say you do a show, you're done. You can't fall asleep, obviously, right after that. How long, what are you doing in that time frame between, let's say, 12 and 2 when you fall asleep?
Yeah, so anytime I do a show, I'll listen to the show back.
Still?
Absolutely, 100%.
Wow.
Because it's really
That's
fresh.
pretty impressive.
And also because if there was something that I did where I'm like, I'll have to listen to 30 minutes of a show just to be like, that was, because I'm like, I said something and I felt that I could use it, or it was good for that spot. I'll listen back to the show, but that's usually when I'm driving in a car and listening. But
after the show,
always after the show.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I never do that. That's the last thing I want to do is listen to myself.
Well, it's painful. Sometimes it's painful because you're listening to yourself tell, the jokes that you already know. And if it went good, it's great. But it's just still you talking.
You're just fast forwarding the part that you want to.
Trying to, yeah. But I'll do that quite a bit. 80% of the time, I'll listen immediately after the show.
Okay.
Because then think about it. You just played that 2 times in your head right away. So if it went well, you're getting that. And if it went bad, you're like, I know where I screwed that joke up right there, or I said that, or I flubbed that line. So it's almost like twice. It's almost like you're just watching a movie. You're like,
yeah, that's a good idea. I got to start doing that. The last thing I want to do is like this weekend, I was in Wisconsin. I was in Milwaukee, and I did an hour, and it was really good. I had really good sets. But I love driving home. I love driving at night. It's like my most enjoyable thing. But the last thing I want to do to ruin that enjoyment is listen to my set.
It's work. That's the work part of it for me,
Yeah.
Telling jokes is easy. Writing is very creative.
Do you listen to your sets before you go to a show?
Sometimes.
That's when I listen.
I will do that as well. Better. And especially if I haven't done a longer set, I will go back and and then I'll be like, all right, this is the flow. And I also feel like if you really did well and you crushed, it's just confidence for you. You're like, I know this bit works.
Yeah.
And it's all in the delivery and everything.
That's interesting. So, okay, you listen to your set, you get home, it's still within an hour of when your show is done. So you're not falling asleep yet.
Yeah.
What are you doing then?
Honestly, probably binge watching stuff on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
What do you watch?
I've been watching Imposters.
What's that?
I watched Suits based off of your recommendation I saw a while back.
God, that show's so bad.
It is, but you're like, wow.
It's so bad.
But the people on that show are so good looking. You're like, you can't stop watching it.
It's so unwatchable.
I was watching Only Murderers in the Building. I thought that was good.
Back when you were back in the day when you were doing with the riddles, the riddles time, were there times where you're like, man, I wish I was home? Like you're like regretted being out after midnight? Were there like fights? Because you're on the south side. I feel like, did you get into a lot of fights? Well, you were a doorman. So
I really didn't.
You would trick them? You'd mind fuck people coming to the door starting shit with you?
I was always, I mean, look at me. I'm 5'7". I'm not intimidating. I'm pretty likable right up front, other than when I'm standoffish with you. But I wasn't back then. So I would go up to a table like a big dude, and I'd be like, hey, could you keep it down? And then he'd look at me, and he's like, yeah. Like, I was never a threat to anybody, right? Yeah. And I wouldn't come off like an asshole, like, hey, you got to keep it down. I'd be like, hey, you think you can keep it down? Like, and,
I've seen you kick people out. Yeah.
But it's actually the women who were more confrontational than any man that I have women go on, and then I always just try and get them out of the showroom because they want to get loud right away. And then I'd get them out into the showroom, and then they'd, be yelling, and I'm like, okay, you can yell at me all you want out here. I just needed you out here.
Right.
And, name calling and all that stuff. I did have somebody follow me off stage one time, very early on. I just didn't handle the situation well.
You mean you had a heckler?
I had a heckler, and they were right up front, and there was a whole table. There's like 12 of them at a table, and then there was some dude, and I was never, when I was dealing with hecklers, I was never good at the whole being confrontational stuff or like slamming them. I learned over years, for me, my style, I just kind of roll with whatever's happening. Yeah. And I never like, hey, shut it down. I never shut it down. I just kind of let it play it and see where it goes. Well, I shut this down, and it just wasn't my persona. There was nothing about it. I don't know. I called him an asshole and did something and told him he slept with all his friends at his table or something along those lines. I don't remember exact words. And anyhow, I walked off stage, and I get about halfway to the server area, and this guy he got out of his seat, and he's coming at me, and he's like, he's
ready
cocked.
to punch.
And my brother happened to be at the show. And my brother, I'm 5'7", he's 6'2", and he's huge. Well, he saw the guy follow me, and he was in the back of the room, so he starts coming this way, and I'm walking this way, and the guy's following me, he's coming this way. Well, I see my brother start to like pick it up like he's running, and I'm like, where the hell is he running to? And then he comes right past me and then gets right in between me and the guy who's like this. Now, the guy was shorter than I was, so he was like this on me. But, I mean, I never saw it coming. So he just kind of stopped him, and then he pushed him out, and that was...
Where was this at?
It was at Riddles.
I did a show with you recently, or you were managing, and there was ladies talking, and they would not shut up, and you just kept going to them, and you were like sarcastically making fun of them.
Yeah.
Do you remember this night? It was recently. It was like the Make-A-Wish night where they had comedians trying comedy for the first time.
I do remember.
And you're like, hey,
I'm like, I'm trying here.
And her daughters were like, Mom, shut up, or whatever was going on, and you're like, what did I just say?
I know exactly what it was, and this is gonna sound horrible. There was 2 people that came in, and then 2 people that came in late. And of the 2 people that came in late, they didn't hear the rules and all that. Oh,
yeah.
And they were talking, and the one of them, the one lady, she was
crutches or something,
right?
Or a cane or something.
There was something that was wrong with her. And I gave her, you're right, Paul, I probably went up 10 times to this table. I was like, listen, you guys just got to keep it. And they're like, okay. But then they would just start talking again. And like right away. I ended up kicking her out.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
She left, and she was handicapped.
Yeah.
And I felt horrible, but I couldn't do anything to stop her. And it's so funny because
I called you on that.
My boss was there that night, and she goes, you're a real hard ass, Brian, huh? Kicking out the handicapped person.
I remember that.
And I felt so terrible. But then after the show, the sister who stayed, they came up to me and they
apologized.
They go, thanks so much for kicking her out. Like, this is her sister. It
was her sister. I thought it was her kids. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
thanks so much. Yeah.
No handicaps allowed at Sandy's. That's the new rule.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're out of time, Brian.
All right.
You delayed all the questions that we were going to ask about your conspiracy theories and COVID being not real.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about your upcoming shows?
They can check my website. It's funnybrianhicks.com. And I'm on all the socials at funnybrianhicks.
Thanks, Brian Hicks, for having me. Finally doing the podcast. And thank you all for listening to another edition of Why Are You Awake? Go to sleep.